I just wanted to welcome all of our members to our first Fireside Chat with the legendary Mr. Frank Stronach. Thank you for joining us today. You could ask questions throughout the webinar in the chat section. And to start off, I'd like to ask the audience, where's everyone tuning in from? So if you go over to the right of your screen, you'll see the chat box there and you can interact with us there throughout the entire webinar. Mr. Frank Stronach, thank you for joining us today for our first Fireside Chat.
It's great to be here. The only thing missing is the fireplace. Okay.
We'll have to work on that for the
All
next
right.
time.
Okay.
So everybody knows the legendary Frank Stronach through your successes with Magna, employing 180,000 people in 34 different countries. But you came to Canada with $200 in your pocket. Can you tell us how you started out from a one-man operator, immigrating to Canada with $200 in your pocket, to the Frank Stronach?
Well, the $200 didn't last that long. And that's why towards the end, right? There was time when I was hungry. Hungry not because I wanted to lose weight. I was hungry. I had no money to buy food. And that leaves a very big impression, right? And I guess that's maybe the primary reason between my thinking, my thoughts, that and I've been blessed with a good mind and good health, that I said, gee, I could be of great service to society by establishing an economic charter of rights. And economic charters of rights, I think, would could eliminate poverty. And that means to eliminate poverty so nobody would have to go hungry.
That's amazing. Your life experiences led you to your mission now, which is to eliminate poverty in Canada through what you refer to as a Canadian Economic Charter of Rights. What does that mean, a Canadian Economic Charter of Rights?
Basically, what it means is, well, the simplest way to explain is all politicians, all business people, and most people agree, if the economy doesn't work, nothing else will work. If the economy doesn't work, you cannot feed the hungry. You cannot look after the most fragile people, the elderly, the sick, and the handicapped. But it's amazing.
But what drives the economy?
Yeah, the economy is driven by three forces: smart managers, hardworking employees, and investors. The message I want to get across is loud and clear: without workers, you can't make a profit. So I think it's so realistic. It's so plain. I think it's a message which should be easily understood. The divide between the very rich and the working class gets bigger and bigger, and it seems the very rich don't want to share the profits with the working class.
What is causing this big divide between the very rich, so the 1%, and the working class?
It's causing because the world has always been dominated by the golden rule, by the people which have the gold or the money make the rules. You don't see those people anymore, and they might live in Hawaii, they might live in Beverly Hills, they might live in Monaco, so you don't. So the dilemma is, how can we dismantle the chains of dominations? Not via violent revolutions, destructive revolutions, via a revolution of the mind.
And a revolution of the mind would entail these 7 principles in the Economic Charter, getting people to think in economic terms?
That's correct. The revolution of the mind would be an economic charter of rights. In my case, I propose 7 rules And it has nothing to do with politics. Those are 7 economic principles. When you take a closer look, should make sense to a lot of people. And the very key is we got to get Canada back on a solid economic foundation, because our debt's climbing like crazy, the bureaucracy is climbing like crazy, the imports are climbing like crazy. So we got to get things in a good order that the economy can function.
We have a $2.18 trillion debt. Do you think we have enough time to change the trajectory, or is it too late?
Well, let's hope it's never too late, right? There must be tangible hopes, because I think kids, in case kids, or teenagers, if they ask those questions to their father or mother, how can the country pay back its debt? It's pretty frightening, right? Because I've never seen yet where banks have forgiven loans. Okay, so sooner or later we gotta pay it back. So we gotta really think, what do we have to do that we can pay it back?
And what can we do?
Well, we can do, as I said earlier on, we gotta create an environment whereby workers can participate in the profits, right? What the economy creates.
And by allowing workers to participate, we'll have enough economic freedom that we'll be able to begin to pay down this.
Examples, because I've practiced that, and I have examples where I can show how and what, right? When I put in the corporate constitutions in the early 80s,
At Magna, you put in a
at
corporate
Magna, yes.
constitution?
When I put in that constitution, which amongst other things, it says that 10% of the profits have to go to the workers over and above their wages. So when I put in this corporate constitution, our profits went up the first year 40%, the second year 100%, and the third year about 200%.
Wow.
So when you get workers engaged in a tangible way, then you release an energy of untold proportions. So even I do say, number one on the first principle of the Economic Charter of Rights, no country or Canada should have no debt, and I propose that we pay back the debt in 20 years.
In 20 years. Do you believe that's feasible?
Yeah, I believe if we get the workers engaged, we could pay it back between 5 or 10 years. So I believe very strongly that could be done.
Wow, that's very positive news.
Well, it should be, everything else right now, it's frightening, because we're not dark about it, what would happen, right? We're totally, I think, negligence to our future generation.
Yes, yes.
And I think
our great grandchildren are going to ask, "What did you do? What did you do?"
Yes, it'd be pretty thing, especially to the parents, etc. Right? Mm-hmm. So we gotta think about it. How can we? What does the economy need? What do we have to do that Canada is on a very sound economic basis?
So your first principle that you propose, Mr. Stronach, is balance the budget and eliminate the debt. Do we have any questions in the audience for Mr. Stronach in regards to the first principle of the Canadian Economic Charter? Okay, we'll move on to the next point, which is reduce government overhead and red tape. Bureaucracy in Canada has grown significantly, and you have said that you wouldn't have been able to build Magna in today's climate.
Yes, but every change has to come in a civilized way, and I'm not pointing fingers whose fault it is, huh? To a certain extent, it's all our fault, right? Because we all should think a bit. We have voting rights, etc., and we have to. But the problem is, people are not educated in schools. Even the young people should be educated how important the economy is. So it's just not. It's the system we have to change, right? Because we have allowed that basically an empire, okay, grew, right? I would call it a self-serving empire grew, and I would say we right now, I would say we have maybe about 1 million regulators, right? Because when we take a look, about 50 years ago, when the first computers came on the market, the slogan was, if you got such a computer, you could eliminate a total office floor. But now when I look around in the big cities, I see 20 times more office buildings, right? So what do they do in the office buildings? They don't make products. It's regulations, regulations, regulations. So we have created an empire
But don't we need regulations to
yes,
protect?
we do need regulations, but we can be over-regulated. Let me give you an example. We need regulations when we buy food, right? We want to make sure the food is done in a proper way. So we need regulators in the food industry, right? Okay, so you don't want to buy something and your kids get sick or they might even die. So that's very important that we do. And we do need regulators in the building industry, right? Because we want to have buildings. It's got to be designed for snow load here in Canada, or the wind load, or for the sewage thing. Yeah, we do need, but we are way too much, right? I mean, Canada just operated greatly 40, 50, 60 years ago, 70 years ago, operated quite greatly. We had no problems in that regard, but our bureaucracy climbed maybe 300%, right? So
and has this happened to countries globally? Is Canada the
pretty well handled. It's created globally for the simple reason politics alone doesn't work, right? Okay, when George Washington, the first president of the United States, when he stepped back, he said, "Beware of politicians," right? And one of I would say, the greatest statesman in recent history, what I would call Winston Churchill, right? Winston Churchill, in his later years, he realized, Winston Churchill said, Parliament does not work. There's only politicians in there. We need a chamber of citizens, okay, to balance, and we got to correct those things in those terms.
So David asks in the chat, is there a way to engage government to become accountable?
Yes, it's the Economic Charter of Rights puts an accountability to the government, because one is they must have balanced budgets, because we realize, or every housewife knows, if she spends more than what her husband brings in on her salary, she spends more, they wind up in the poorhouse. Every farmer knows. Every farmer knows he cannot spend more than what he gets for the crops. Otherwise, he loses the farm. It's only our politicians don't know, right? And well, the sad thing about it is the mandate of a politician is to be elected or re-elected. So, but we cannot do that and put in such a heavy mortgage on our future generation, right? It's a mortgage they can't, unless we take drastic steps, we cannot repay it, right? It's so obvious that people don't ask more questions, and so we need a framework. The Economic Charter gives you a lot of rights and the responsibility to governments, to the politicians.
Fantastic, fantastic. So your third point, Mr. Stronach, is simplifying the tax system. So our tax code is convoluted. It is very difficult for the average person to understand.
So, yeah, I think you used the word convoluted because I showed you a very big book and there's
Yes.
thousands and thousands of paragraphs and one is more convoluted than the other one, right? Okay, because people are not aware of that, right? It's an amazing, it affects them so much. And those convoluted tax rules and regulations serve, there are special interest groups, right, in Canada, which pay very little monies, right? I mean, just recently there was a big debate in parliaments about capital gains tax, right? What I'm saying is, look, income is income is income. It doesn't matter where it comes from. And you should be taxed. If you make more, you got to be taxed more. If you make less, you'd be
All
taxed less.
income should be taxed.
All income should be taxed, right? So the very key is the tax system should be black and white, no loopholes. Basically, high school students with reasonable remarks should be able to fill out an income tax form. It should be simple, black and white.
How many pages ideally would you reduce?
Well, we have now there's so many thousands of pages. I think 100 years ago, I think there were 7 pages on the tax thing here, and now I think there's maybe 10,000 pages, right? I mean, it's so many pages and thousands of tax paragraphs. One is more convoluted than the other one.
If we simplified the tax code, wouldn't we get rid of a lot of accountants?
That is, well, you see, I don't really want to put it in that point because to get rid of people, it's not civilized, right? I just want to bring forward, right? Because the accountants and all the bureaucrats also have kids. It's for the sake of their kids too. We have to bring about changes in a very civilized way, right? And I'm saying, I'm not pointing the fingers, it's the fault of bureaucrats and we got to fire bureaucrats. No, I'm not saying that. All what I'm saying is we got to have a hiring freeze. We can only, till we reach a reasonable balanced system that the country could be run in a very for the benefit of people.
No chainsaw approach.
No chainsaw approach. And we have so many great businesswomen in Canada with a good mind and businessmen with a good mind. And they work in a great wide fields of like in the pharmaceutical industry and the health industry and building industry. And many of those Canadians would be very happy, you know, when they get close to their retirement or shortly after retirement, they are full with knowledge. They could serve to the minister. We have various ministries. They could serve there on an advisory board. It would be a huge saving, but most of all, things would function then. So we got to try to look for a structure which would function.
And so going on to your 4th point, unchaining small business. What does unchaining small business mean?
Unchaining means to take the chains off, right? I mean, the small business got into so much red tape. It's practically, it's killing small business, right? So we got to make sure, because small business is the backbone, right, of Canada. Small business and family farms, but we talk about family farms, but a little further down the road. So so basically, trying to tell a small business, you got to band together because there's about 1 million small businesses with their families. We talk quite of a few million people, and they have a vote. So I like to see if small business does well, the whole country would do well, right? So basically, I'm saying you small business gotta get together. If you get together, you could eliminate the red tape, and small business shouldn't pay a business tax.
No business
because
tax.
small business makes very little monies.
Mhm.
When they have a tax audit, it's just a huge rigmarole, right? Because, where they did that hamburger, who paid for it, or whatever, right? It's for all those things are not in the law because so for small business, it's just they want to do employees then pay taxes because. And in return, the government will make more money that way because governments make the major income is from income tax, people which work and get a salary.
So income tax would be the only tax for small
The
business.
income tax would be the wage taxes, the income tax of workers, right? And if the owner takes some monies out, he's got to pay the same thing, whatever the rate is, right?
Mhm.
So that would be so basically. The red tape would be taken off. I do stress we need some rules. So small business would be faced with two rules. One, workplace safety. That's important. And we small business cannot dump poison chemicals in their backyard. So the environment is
So there'll
important.
still be some regulations.
Yeah, but they'd be a minimum. They'd
Mhm.
be very small, right? And if we take the regulations off, I mean, business would bloom. There'd be such an energy that everybody would gain from it, and most of all, if small business does well, the whole country will do well.
And what is your definition of small business?
The small business is, that's a good question. Nearly forgot to say that. Yeah, the definition would be a company with less than 300 employees. So, and they would basically have, practically there's no rules, the red tapes are off, and yeah, except the workplace safety and the owners or the entrepreneurs, they are free to pay. There's no rules, right? There's no, they would be smart enough. If you don't look after your key employees, which work hard, they would leave you, or they would do so.
Do you think small businesses should profit share?
No, it does. They could do if they want to. They could share ownership. There's lots of ways they could, but there would be no set rules, huh? Because the entrepreneur, the owner, the least thing is we need rules, and government shouldn't have the right to tell, So I'm saying when business grows beyond 300 employees, then the government would have the right to say, you got to share the profits with the workers, because small business gained by, right, the environment, where there were no taxes, so this allowed them to grow. And most of all, they will realize if they share with workers, they would even grow more or make more profits. That's the interesting part. If you share with workers, you could create happy workers, they think how to make things better. They're right on the front line. It just be an enormous energy. And in Canada everybody would benefit.
And was profit sharing one of the reasons for your success with Magna?
It absolutely, it's as I said earlier on, that when we put in the profit sharing program, our profits at Magna went up 40% the first year, 100% the second year, and 200% the third year. So it's an amazing thing, profit sharing.
And so your sixth point talks about.
I'd like to make one more comment on the front. When when you grow larger, right? Okay, then because usually those are run by institutions, by people which have no affinity for employees. Then when companies grow larger than 300, then that's principle 5, then you have to share with You have to share the profits with the workers.
When your business is over 500 employees?
Over 300 employees.
Over 300 employees. That's when you start profit sharing. How about companies now that are large companies? Should they start profit sharing?
They would not be, because they, even Magna could not, they have thousands of shareholders, and to change the system, that would create havoc, right? It would create, so it's not. So we have to understand, society came a long way via evolutions, right? So when we go back, you had the caveman, and then you had the hunter and the hunted, and then you had the kings and the servants. And now we have an environment, what I would call the bosses and disgruntled employees. So we got the reason why Magna did so well is I treated the workers as partners, and thereby it was a totally, no disgruntlement and so on. And I put in the most innovative human resource structure, right, in the world. Basically, the way that worked was, in every factory had a big billboard saying, if you as an employee think that things are not done right or proper, call the hotline. Because so we are.
And it was an anonymous hotline that
anonymous. They didn't have to give the name. So unless we know, we cannot correct it, right? And that was because we had happy employees. I should point out too, of the 180,000 employees, 1/3 were women. That means we employed about 60,000 women.
Wow.
And the great thing here, that was maybe the core point, right? Because we didn't want to see that, that the people it might be a foreman or a manager or whatever, to have take, with employees. So we wanted to see that our employees went happy to work, that they wouldn't be hassled, they wouldn't be a happy environment. You can only grow if you have happy employees. And every day I went to work, I always asked myself, what do I have to do that workers respect me?
And how did the managers feel about this whistleblowing program?
Well, when I put in the program, the first few years, they said, Frank, are you spying on us? They did not like it. And now they say that's the best thing which ever happened, right? Because we happy employees are more productive, they think, and everybody makes more money. So it serves just a great purpose.
Incredible, incredible. And so you had the largest skilled labor.
The largest labor force.
Skilled labor force.
Yeah, skilled labor force. Yeah, you mean, and that's another thing which worries me. If so, that's really, you're referring now to principle number 6.
Yes.
Where I say high school should end at grade 10, and grade 11 and 12, we should teach kids or young people how to understand the trades. Okay, to acquire skills,
which you believe is very, very important.
It's not only important, right? It would be beneficial to our young people. It would be very wise. It's a benefit. Schools are there to instill knowledge on young people, right? The more knowledge you have, the higher earnings potential are. The more knowledge you have, the easier it is to start your own business. So it's such a win to the students. And it's a win to society, because it takes so long when we do things, when we build things, everything is just complicated. It just is not there, right?
So, Mr. Stronach, you propose that high school ends at grade 10 and grade 11 and 12 are dedicated to learning the trades.
Absolutely, right? So grade 11 and grade 12, they would be exposed to the trades, as I just mentioned before. That's a huge win for the young students, and it's a huge win for society, because right now, anytime you see a new building going up, it's not a factory, it's a warehouse.
Mhm.
We convert factories to warehouses. We haven't got no skilled labor forces. It takes forever, right, to get things done. That's a very worrisome, right? So we got to understand, right, that a country which imports more and more and exports less and less, the living standards will deteriorate drastically. So we got to think about it. Can we export something and import less, right?
How do we compete with cheaper imports?
Well, yes, competition's got to be fair, right? There are countries where they're not run democratically, where you even have maybe forced labor, right? Or where the environmental structures are not properly taken care of. Yes, there are countries where some of those are ignored, right?
Mhm.
And so that would not be fair. We got to assess that, and we got to say, look, we should have the right, or any country should have the right to build. Look, we want to have there be a higher import duty, right?
So
Okay,
tariffs on imports coming
so
in.
every country's got that right, and
Mhm.
basically countries got to figure them out amongst themselves. What would they like to import? What could they export, etc., etc. So every country gotta right now everything is in I think it's the wrong way to do it, to have just straight regulations to all the way through, right? That doesn't work, right? Because let the countries figure out what they need, what they could export and what they could import. It's done way before, and the world functions quite well.
Mhm. Mhm. Trifon asks, how do we get the education system to get on board?
Well, we got to dismantle that self-serving empire.
Mhm.
Okay, because we don't teach young people, right, how to be economically free, how to be, so that's another point. Now, when I look at Canadian people, right, might it be a female or male, if they work for 30 years, they should have enough accumulated that they own their own house, might it be a little house or a condo, and they should have about maybe $300,000 in the bank, so they could, in their retirement years, they could choose their own road to happiness and enjoy retirement. But now it's the other way around. The elderly people, to where the things they get, right? They hardly can live from that,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
They go hungry. I mean, it's the whole system. Why is it that way? Why is there only so few people which are economically free? That's the least amount, if you work 30 years, that you should accumulate that.
Is
So
that your definition of economic freedom?
yeah,
To be
it's
able
more.
to
It should be
own?
more. It should be more, right?
Mhm.
But that's the minimum. We gotta have minimum standards. But you see, the very rich people, or call it the self-serving empire, they don't want to teach people how to be free, because then you cannot manipulate them. So as I go back again, that empire, we got to dismantle the chains, but again, not via violent revolution, via revolution of the mind. Economic charters will balance things out and eliminate poverty, and have that Canadian workers would accumulate more monies to which will be helpful when they retire in a certain age.
Fiona asks, and this is going back to, I suppose, unchaining small business. She asks, what tax incentives, grants, or subsidies could be introduced to help new businesses succeed?
I think there's no need to do that, right? There's no, when I started, I had no subsidies. But there were some subsidies when we already were a multi-billion-dollar thing. There's no need to be subsidies, right? Because when you start out, you should look. When I tell people how to get things, focus on something, do something where you have an affinity for it, do something what you like. Might it be in the food industry, might have been the building industry, might have been tech industry. When you like something, then you accumulate knowledge. If you put in the extra effort, you could accumulate a lot of knowledge, have a higher paid job, but once when you have a higher paid job, save something and start out small.
Is that your formula for success?
Well, yes, that's the formula. Make small steps going up the ladder. But when I started out, right, I rented a small garage. I started out in '57. I came in '55, right? So within the 3 years, I saved $5,000. $5,000 was a lot of money in 1957. You could buy a small house, a small condo, or a small farm, right? But I bought some used machinery and rented a garage. And out I went. I was all self-assured. I said, I'm great in solving problems. If I don't solve the problems, you don't have to pay me. So after 1 month, I hired somebody. After a year, about 10 people. After 2 years, 20. After 5 years, about 5,000. About after 10 years, about 50,000. So it just climbed to about 180,000.
Incredible, incredible. And when did the evolution set in? There's a moment when you
Well,
started expanding.
there is evolutionary processes, right? And the first evolution is when you be hungry, right? And you got no money to buy food that day. I said to myself, look, I don't wish that to anybody, and said, look, we got to be able to create a system where nobody gets hungry, right? Okay. So there are evolutionary processes, and I could go into, maybe we leave that for some other times, right? Because I like to interface. I think I think I could be very helpful or advise people who start out businesses or want to get in there, and hopefully the broadcast will be very useful to a lot of people, right? And for their own businesses they have, or they want to go in business.
Yeah.
But most of all, we gotta have an idea. We gotta have a framework where we say what will happen to our future generations
If we don't
and
change
that's
it.
why if we don't change. I like to communicate with Canadians. I have no agenda. I have a certain age, and yes, I've been fortunate that I accumulated so much accept those experience to young Canadians, and it's such a great country.
So we still have one more principle that we haven't gone over, and this principle is very dear to my heart. I have two young children in the public school board. Canada is the only G7 country without a national food program. You, Mr. Stronach, proposed that we have a national food program that serves both breakfast and lunch, but you take it even further by saying it must be organic.
Yes, it's about 10, 15 years ago, I decided to go out of the large car business, and I should go into the agriculture, because from time to time you assess yourself, and my thing has always been, can I be of greatest service to society, right? Because again, I've been blessed with a good mind and great health. And I've always said, it doesn't matter how smart you are. If the stars are not aligned, things won't work. So, so I feel blessed that the stars are aligned. When we're young, we all hustle a bit to make some monies that we can live in dignity. But then when you do get older, then you ask yourself, what do you have to do? Can you make a contribution to a better society? That should be foremost in our mind. That's the greatest thing when you say, gee, I've done something which is helpful, because that's the only way we can build a balanced society, that we say, look, can we do? Everybody can do a little bit in various way. So that is very, very crucial. But one thing I should have. So I did say, it's very dear to my heart, very important. No Canadian kid should go to school hungry. That means breakfast has to be served. And no Canadian kid should leave the school hungry. That means lunch has got to be served. And by law, that would have to be organic. And I want to come back. There was a reason I got into the agriculture, because the reason was I saw practically all the kids had allergies. I saw stage 2 diabetics rising like thing here.
Behavioral issues.
And autism. So I said, look, we got to do something. The more I got into the agriculture, the more I could see this huge chemical jungle. When we think that 95% of the food eaten in North America, 95% of the food comes from industrial farms. And industrial farms, if you be very observant, you see no more eagles fly. Why? There's no more rabbits. There's no more pheasants. We spray so much fungicide and pesticides. We kill everything. People have no idea how many chemicals they eat every day. And yes, the rich people are more conscientious about organic foods.
But also, organic food for many people is just not financially accessible.
We have to think about it. And when we think that practically all the family farms are practically on welfare, and kids of family farmers say, Mom, Dad, I don't want to be in the farming. I don't want to be on welfare. So I think it's very important, because I said early on, it's small business was the backbone of Canada. So we're family farms. A country which could feed itself never had a problem. Canada could feed itself quite well with organic foods. So, but now organic or family farms cannot compete with industrial farms. That's why I'm saying it's so important that we have a family farm foundation, all right? And they should get a subsidy. It's not really a subsidy if they grow organic foods, because really it makes so much economic sense if we could save billions on medication, if we feed our kids organic foods. If they eat organic, chances are much better that they're healthy and
happy.
If you learn better when you're healthy,
Yes.
and you're more happy if you're healthy. So it's crucial that we have family farms. It should be the most noble thing. We got to get kids back. They should flock back big time, and to get our family farms going. And so this is what the Economic Charter proposes.
Mr. Stronach, thank you so much for the
I want to make
overview.
one more closing sentence for.
Okay, and then we have some questions.
Sure, yeah.
People are going to come on live and ask us some questions, but please.
But it's a very important, especially to the young people, right? It's very important. I want to tell people, young people to a great extent, focus on the day to stay alive, but leave the door open for tomorrow and follow your dreams and be guided by your conscience. That's what I do.
Incredible, incredible. Thank you, Mr. Stronach. Thank you for
It's
sharing
great to
that.
be here, and I hope there's so many, we in a half an hour, you can only tell so many
No.
stories. I would be very happy to share my experiences with Canadians, and
Well, we'll have to schedule another fireside chat.
yeah, we try to put some fires on, right?
Get some fires started, yes. To learn more about the Canadian Economic Charter, please go to EconomicCharter.ca. If you have any questions that went unanswered, you could email us at info@EconomicCharter.ca. We will be taking some live questions now. Tony Rupert.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me okay? Can you
We
hear
can
me?
hear you just great.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes, can you hear us?
I found that your presentation was more than excellent. I only hope that more Canadians could listen to what you've just said. But here's my question. Since your approach is so very sensible, but how do you overcome the many interest groups that you referred to earlier, interest groups that will try to stop these excellent recommendations that Mr. Stronach has presented to us today?
Well, it has to be grassroots, and yes, I need grassroots means that everybody should be involved because everybody would benefit. And so, I can only transmit, I can only reach so many people, and thereby, I think it's very crucial. What we want to do is that we sent, Canada has 343 political ridings where members of the national parliaments are elected. I'd like to see small business chapters and also family farms and those ridings, and with the board and with members, and the board and members would interface with the public. It's how important the economic charters would be. There is no future without the economic charter, right? It's like if you love your kids, you got to think about it. So what I'm saying is, I'm not saying we should take away from the rich. I'm saying, look, workers have a moral right to a piece of the economic pie. They help to bake, because without them, we cannot do that. So, but we gotta get the messages all across Canada, because politics can't solve the problems. The politicians are trapped in the system. I know so many great politicians, great people, and especially young politicians. They want to change Canada, say gang ho, but the older politicians say you cannot say that. Otherwise, we won't be re-elected. So there's nothing, if you cannot bring anything forward, right? So, and that's why I quote Winston Churchill quite a bit. To me, he was the greatest statesman. When Winston got a little older, the same as me, you reflect on a lot of things, but Winston's statement always was, Parliament doesn't work. There's only politicians in Parliament. Parliament, it's so important, it says, that we have a chamber of citizens which will balance out the politicians. In for Canada, I recommend the chamber of citizens would be small business, because they all will play on the same level playing field. So that is crucial, right?
Thank you, Mr. Stronach. We have Rob Van Royen next, who would like to ask a question.
Hey, Frank, I did attend your meeting down in Aurora a few a few months ago at the restaurant, and I have been handing out those pamphlets to various people. And the question that I get all the time back is how? How are we going to implement these changes? Some of them appear like they would have to be government changed, meaning bills would have to be passed to make some of these changes. So my question is, how do we move forward and make this happen? I love all the ideas. I love the charter. But how do we make this happen?
It is communications, communications, communications. Like you could have, if you could have the best ideas, if you could, the charter basically it's only has to do with economics. It's only 7 principles, and I know a lot of people out there, they would say we need this and we need that. Yeah, of course, but we still could have politics after Canada back on a sound economic footing. Otherwise, we cannot change anything. I got to repeat over and over, if the economy doesn't work, nothing will work. We cannot feed the hungry. We cannot look after the most fragile people, the elderly, the sick, and the handicapped. It's the economy. And we do not talk. That's the most important subject. We do not talk. I want to, if people listen, you got to tell your neighbor that's the economy, and the neighbor tells the other neighbor. So everybody's got to, if you love your kids, you got to do something. Without that, there is no future. It's as simple as that. And the world, the globe has proven that many times the countries went bankrupt, and they suffered quite a bit, right? So you gotta get out. You gotta tell your neighbor how important the economic charter is, and he's got to tell. It's got to be grassroots. Okay, I have no agenda. I don't need. Yes, I'm supporting money-wise the thing here, but I make it quite. We audit it properly, and I make it quite clear that I would never take out a single dollar. Right? It is the country's been great to me. It's a great, great country, and we shouldn't lose the country by default. And we look. If young people ask your parents what they think, how we can pay back the debt, what do they think? When you go to the department store now, you don't see anything made in Canada or in the United States. Everything is made someplace else. So we gotta get going the economy. I'd be happy to answer more questions, but I one more statement I have to make then.
Okay. So we have Stuart Wright and then Kirsten Kelly, and then we'll finish it off. Stuart Wright.
Yeah, thanks, Frank. Good to see you again. It's been a long time since the Albany. A couple of questions. The first was relating to Canadian leadership and productivity. My first question is, how can Canadians inspire the next generation of leadership to tackle the challenges of our country, which we're facing? Hi, can you hear us?
Yeah. Yes.
Well, I've always said governments can't give you anything unless they take it away from you first. And I'm saying small business, we got to take the chains and the red tape of the entrepreneurs. Let the entrepreneurs make 50 million or 100 million if they be smart, if they got great ideas, and they would inspire other young people, right? If everybody right now, it seems everybody, the way the environment is, everybody wants to be a financial specialist and a lawyer, and everybody wants to join the government. So that means that if the government employs 100% of the population, who would plant the tomatoes? How would
Absolutely.
we get food on the table? So we gotta small business should be the engine, right? Should be price. Society cannot have a free society. The state, the communistic, the communistic philosophies that they're great in a basic, in its basic form, but they're based upon wealth distribution. First, you got to create the wealth. Otherwise, there's nothing to distribute. And if we are not, basically, I want to tell the rich, you gotta don't hold back. We gotta teach our kids how important the economy is, and to all the people. And if the rich, the world has always been dominated and still is dominated by the people which have the monies. But you don't see them anymore. They're not in discussion. But if they're not smart, they're gonna lose everything, because the laws of nature are much stronger than any man-made law. The laws in nature, when a species does not reproduce itself, and other species will take over hands. And down the road, maybe the world winds up. Basically, I'm saying, let's make out of every worker a capitalist. Okay, that's the whole purpose about that thing. That would eliminate the poverty. That poverty leads to crime, leads to discrimination, etc. If we have economic charters, I think that will lead to happy, balanced people. That's what it's all about.
Thank you. And now we have Dr. Kirsten Kelly. She is an executive director on the CEC to make some final comments, and then we'll go back to you, Mr. Stronach.
Hello, can you hear me okay? I don't know why my camera's not working. I apologize for that.
We hear you good.
Okay, good. So what I see is that the path forward is clear. First, we have to organize locally and get chapters in each riding all across the country. Real change, of course, has to happen from the bottom up, not the top down. We need chapters in every community, boots on the ground in every district. So, we ask, how can a small group influence the social and political policies of an entire nation? But by creating allies among the people who don't totally understand the conflict between collectivism and individualism, by uniting small businesses, workers, and family farmers, and people like everyone on this chat tonight, we can, word by word, start spreading with personal conversations to all our contacts, everyone we meet every day, sharing the brochures that is provided by the Economic Charter, pointing people to the website, getting them to join the coalition. There is strength in numbers. The more people we have, the more people we represent, the more power we have. We can outnumber all those small interest groups easily. It can be done. We just actually need to have the will to do it. The small groups only have power because they actually stood up and did something. We need to stand up together. We are the majority. So share the brochures, point people to the website, email all your contacts. How many contacts do you have? Put out social media posts, blogs. Rob, just like you do, have conversations with your groups. Put out letters to the editor in local papers, wear a pin, a bumper sticker, put decals on your storefront, on your car. So start those local chapters, have meetings, celebrate the wins, and share with the rest of the groups that are out here now what's working, what doesn't work. Have educational and motivational workshops. We now have over 2,200 people across the country, and I think our list of leaders is over 70. We are growing, and we are starting to grow fast. The momentum is starting, and we can get this to turn into a tidal wave across the country. If you sign up 2 people on day 1 who sign up 2 people, and we repeat that for 1 month, we will reach 1.4 million people each. In no time, we could get this thing to roll right across Canada. So have hope, have courage, have conversations, and get excited about this. And of course, then we need to act strategically. Once we get the numbers, even though we're nonpartisan, talk to all the politicians from every party. Get them to sign pledges that they agree with the Economic Charter. Run for office. Support the ones who are running for office that support us and support the Economic Charter. So build coalitions with people. Tell them now, tell them often. Once we have a coalition of millions of people, we're no longer a small interest group. We're a huge interest group, and they have to pay attention to us way more than any of those little lobby groups. So we just need to get significant numbers, and all of us know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. So third, we must lead by example. We have to show our communities what principled leadership looks like. We have to be professional, accountable, and act with integrity and honesty and truthfulness. So we need to take this to a very high level. We have to demonstrate that freedom and responsibility go hand in hand. We don't want handouts from the government. We just want the government to take their hand out of our pockets and stop controlling us and treating us like puppets and servants. So the task before us is not easy, but nothing worthwhile ever is. We're not just fighting for ourselves, we're fighting for our children and grandchildren. So some say that it could be impossible, but everything was considered impossible until it's done. Thank you, Ivana. And thank you, Frank.
Very right. Thank you so much,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Kirsten Kelly. So for more information, again, please go on our website, EconomicCharter.ca. If you haven't already signed up as a member, please do so. You can also step up to become a leading board member in your riding. We want board in all 343 federal ridings. It's EconomicCharter.ca. And Mr. Stronach, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. Any closing thoughts?
Well, closing dark. Yeah, it's the country's been great to me, and like I said, I've been blessed by nature with a good mind and good health, and I want to transmit what I accumulated on wisdom and experiences. I want to transmit it and hand it over to a younger generation.
Closing
Canadians.
question. You could be retired anywhere right now, laying on the beach in Monaco, and you chose to stay in Canada and fight for this mission to eliminate poverty with the Canadian Economic Charter. Why?
Well, there were a lot of people which gave their lives for freedom. Okay, so this is basically a small sacrifice. Okay, and I have a certain age, and I'm committed to certain principles. And well, yes, I knew that some dirt will fly my direction, you know, when I get in the details, when I bring forwards, but I do what my conscience tells me, and so I have a certain age, when I will have no. And I will be in a nice place.
Please, board